This is Lori Elliott. Welcome back to Mapping the DNA of an Idea. This is the final module, Module 8, called Taking Action. Now, the main focus of this module is to wrap up on the workshop, review where this workshop and the ideation process fits into the idea cultivation cycle and the cultivation engine cycle, and prepare to plan for next steps. We will review what you have learned in this workshop about moving from an idea to a concept. We will focus especially on the steps involved in mapping the DNA or basic components of an idea to initiate development of a business, project, or venture. In this module, you will also learn about the path forward and draft your own idea roadmap. You will see the importance of using the idea roadmap and other tools to plan action steps for continuing the early stage development process to move towards a sustainable business, project, or venture. This is a very quick module. You actually should refer to it after the workshop to help you think through your next steps. So this is connecting you to your follow-up steps. Now remember, this format is adapted for live workshop, which means that there are several pauses throughout the module where the facilitator will have discussion or do activities. So your module objectives for this module are: first, we will review the idea cultivation cycle, and more specifically, its ideation stage. Then we will outline the path forward, and finally, you will draft an idea roadmap for your own idea, project, or venture. Now here we're going to review from the beginning. You will see here this time, however, I have an overlay of our programs, and just, take a note of idea cultivation. In this workshop, we focus only on the first two stages, idea phase and very beginning of the concept phase. So we are still in the development part of the cycle. We haven't yet gotten to the startup stage where the sustainability part of the cycle begins. I will return to this image to talk about the way forward a little later. The steps and tools designed for use in our early stage development process will help you get from idea to concept, as you've been learning. These steps and tools are shown here. We collectively call this the idea cultivation cycle. You will continue to do many of these things throughout the life cycle of your venture's development. Doing this can empower you to successfully grow your venture. Many entrepreneurs that we have worked with tend to delay working on important early stage development tasks until they can find an investor to fund their early stage development. And from my own experience, I've never seen this happen, okay? But, and let me just say that family and friends, will often help you and put money into it. My family and friends did. So yes, you do get money, but someone who's an official funder and investor that's not connected to you very closely, that's virtually nil. But the point here is that it's because their venture is not mature enough at this point. Angel investors and venture capitalists are usually not willing to put money into ventures at the concept or even pre-concept stage. They typically come in during the proof of concept process. Most banks and institutional investors expect your venture to be bankable, and many want you to be an existing business that is going to expand. The truth is that money usually comes much further down the line. You can go through much of this early stage development, however, especially the idea to concept process, on your own without help from paid consultants. This is why we developed our methodology and support services. Then you can do it whenever and however you want. When you finish the early stage development, you will have a solid concept. You will be able to demonstrate the understanding and knowledge, as well as elements of capacity or capability that you can express to demonstrate that you're moving towards being able to implement this particular idea. And the idea overall is that you can communicate your idea much better. Remember, this is a process. It is not necessarily easy, but our system is designed to keep you on the right track and give you what you need so that you can be more effective with your time, your talents, your finances, and other resources. The process and the fact that you are the main one working on it also reduces the amount of money you need in the early stage. Here you'll see the stages within the idea cultivation cycle. I'm not going to actually spend time to elaborate on them. In a few minutes, I will provide you an outline of the tasks associated with the entire idea cultivation cycle. For now, this is just a reminder. Remember now that ideation is the first stage of our idea cultivation process, and these represent the steps. So the focus of ideation is to generate ideas, and here you use the brainstorming technique to help you do this. Next is state the challenge for each idea. Here you use the challenge statement, possible solutions, and brainstorming techniques for this. For researching your idea, you use the problem to possibility matrix, stakeholder analysis worksheet, and the customer profile for this. You then, for shape solutions for each idea, you use the seed model canvas and the concept document outline. Then, the last step is to develop a roadmap for each idea, and this you'll actually learn about in this module. This represents the minimum activity you want to engage in to elaborate your idea. In other workshops, you will learn about additional activities and tools that you can use. Now, the idea to concept process, again, is covering those three stages within idea cultivation. So I didn't break this down by those phases because they kind of overlap and stuff. So I just did it as a process list. So I'm going to unpack the idea to conceptualization process we use. This works to get a solid concept, but that concept may not have reached proof of concept. So this is still important. It really depends on how you're working and the things that you've done in order to mature your idea. In any case, you are prepared to move the concept forward. I will focus on the key steps, not all of the activities underneath. We cover these in the mapping, developing, and leveraging assets and conceptualizing an idea workshops that follow this one. Steps 1 through 4 we covered in the workshop, so I will not reintroduce these, but just for yourself, capture in your mind the things that you did in this workshop within this process. For example, you will see the problem to possibilities matrix under step 2. In this slide, you can see more clearly that we only gave you a few of the activities in the ideation stage. You can see, for example, the initial seed model under step 3. Step 5 focuses on expanding understanding and even interaction with the context of the problem and people. Step 6 focuses on deepening your understanding of the people involved. We move from looking at factual information to perceiving the emotions, feelings, and aspirations of the people involved in your idea. Step 7 unpacks the value inherent in your solution, project, or venture. It is now looking forward. Okay, so you're now switching in this process, you are now starting to look forward instead of looking at drafts. You're now starting to look forward of what this business model will be. Not that you haven't been drafting, but you've been picking up a lot of information about the background and the people, right? The problem and the people, so that you could actually develop the possibilities. Step 8, you now articulate the seed model on which you are going to build a more detailed concept. So you had an initial concept, an initial seed model, and now you've been refining it as you've been iteratively going through things, as you've gone through the different activities and tasks in the idea to concept process. And now you're coming to a point where you have a better elaborated model, seed model. Okay, and then this can serve as an anchor for you then to develop a fuller concept document, because again, as I mentioned before, oftentimes the seed model and concept document are, people go back and forth with that and they develop them kind of in tandem. Great. So step 9 is noting additional activities, but also to highlight there is ongoing analysis, insights, and data collection. Step 10 is about completing conceptual drafts. And here, the draft is used to share with key stakeholders for feedback. We actually recommend that you focus on these activities after you've done your proof of concept, but you can use it earlier. Keep in mind though, just because you have documents does not mean the concept is bankable. You will still have several more major phases to get there. The final step in developing a solid concept is to produce a refined concept. From here, you have a foundation for engaging with others to mature your venture. You can also use what you've constructed to approach investors and funders, but those who offer funds for early stage, but it has to be those who offer funds for early stage projects and ventures. But remember, this is a small percentage of the total funders that work in this space. So now let's return to the cultivation engine cycle to now look forward, past the idea cultivation stage. Once you have a proof of concept, which happens in the concept phase, okay, you enter the seeds phase. Here you will work to pilot or implement on a small scale and also begin to build the organization more intentionally. Now in certain sectors, and depending on the type of project or venture, this would also be the period where you end up doing full feasibility. When you're in the proof of concept phase, that's really the same thing as pre-feasibility. As you go into the startup and growth stages, venture scaling becomes more critical. At the same time, you must continue the hard work of taking your idea from inception to maturation and fruition while moving through the venture life cycle. It's an iterative process. Remember, we talked about in the early stages, it's very, very iterative. You may also get to a point where your product or organization starts shrinking or dying. And remember, we're now looking at maturity, rebirth, and death. Then you must decide how to reinvigorate it or let it go and move on to another pursuit. You can see that there is still much work to be done right now with your idea, and that you will need to prepare yourself now in order to continue the venture cultivation process successfully. If you have never implemented a business or you have not been involved in the startup process, you will find this early stage development process dramatically different than working in an existing business, and ones particularly in their growth and maturity stages. You will see that there are so many facets of venture development that you need to account for. The work can seem overwhelming. That's why we're here to help you navigate the process to be more effective and creative. We are here to help you learn and practice the discipline you will need to cultivate your idea, from idea inception to concept to seed, proof of concept, to startup and beyond. So now let's actually take a look at the roadmap that carries you forward. Okay, so this is our venture cultivation roadmap. It shows what it takes to go from initial idea up to market launch, where the startup phase begins. It shows the main steps involved. The steps on the roadmap are in the order used in our coaching programs. Your actual steps may occur in a different order than shown here, depending on your situation. This workshop focuses on the first 7 steps that comprise the initial idea stage. That is the point of this workshop, to help accelerate your work on the process shown on this roadmap. Now, this workshop certainly covers this, but there's also, when you get into mapping, developing, leveraging assets, and also conceptualizing an idea, certain parts of those also refer to this particular phase, steps 1 through 7. But overall, those 3 take you through proof of concept. So typically, if you are a startup and you sign up for our entire venture cultivation program, you will go through all these 48 steps in a year, or approximately 1 step or module per week. Because this is an iterative process, during the year-long program, you will still need to work on previous steps as needed. Each program participant's work requirements will vary because coaching is tailored to the needs of each person, their venture, and their situation. Our venture cultivation roadmap is a template or master plan for developing a venture. Once you learn this process, it becomes easier to use it again in the future. Your initial investment in time and effort to learn and practice this process will help lay a foundation for future use of the process. Now, this is the part that I think is really important to understand. This also gives you a dynamic capability, the ability to continue to innovate, which is very important. We talked about the difference between thriving and surviving ventures, and a key cornerstone of that is ongoing innovation. both incremental and radical. And so this process, you can use it over and over again for the life of your project or your venture. And so this is helping you gain an edge in the marketplace, because basically companies that do not do, one, early stage development are not as innovative, and two, if you do not have dynamic capabilities and you're able to reconfigure and rework your venture, basically you kind of get swallowed up by the markets and the environment, okay? So, again, remember that if you truly implement this, this can help you keep yourself in a position of sustainability. There are many factors, as we talked about, related to business in terms of its success, but you have to have some underlying capabilities, and this is one system of innovation that allows you to have that. Okay, so of course, you don't have to go through our programs. However, keep in mind that whether you try to create a venture on your own, with someone else, or with us, you must still go through a process like this and put in the hard work. What we offer is a logical methodology and roadmap that covers all the bases you can think of and many that you haven't. Our programs provide a structure that will greatly increase your ability to mature ventures. Now let's discuss the best times to request different forms of resources and funding support. When a funder looks at what you have, they will be looking at whether or not you can pull off the venture and whether they will get their expected return on investment. If the answer is negative, they will tell you no or not respond. Most funders do not give feedback. It is much better to prepare yourself ahead of time before you speak to funders. Don't present your idea too early before you are ready. Talk to venture capitalists and angel investors after you have a proof of concept during the concept to seed stages. By the time you develop a proof of concept, you will have generated and developed your idea, used the seed model canvas, and developed a strong, or I should say a solid concept and documented in a concept document. You will also have validated that there is a fit between your product and your customers in the market. When you talk to general investors, they will want your venture to be bankable. They are looking for a feasibility report, market analysis, and other documentation that tells them it will work. They may also want to see you execute the venture before they are willing to fund. However, people like us recognize what it takes in the early stages of venture development before you get to the startup and growth stages. We have ways to provide you with resources or help you find resources, which may not always be monetary in nature. These resources can help you move your idea further along. We also have mechanisms that can help us judge your progress and see better how to help you. You're getting just a taste of that now. If we see progress of your idea and growth in ability, often we are willing to make an investment. Here you can see a list of strategy and operational functions that are typical for a functioning organization. These are a part of the primary business process from vision to customer. These are just a few of the most important. I'm sure you can think of others. Once you get to venture startup, you will need to have a functioning organization to help implement your venture. Your strategies and business processes associated with delivering to your customers need to be documented so that team members and partners can do the work. You start as a loose team, right, in these early stages, generating ideas to being more structured and process-oriented. Lack of this is a problem. A lack of this shift, right, is a problem that startups often have. They get stuck at this point because they have not yet established the right processes, organizational structure, and management and team structure in order to implement their growing venture effectively and efficiently. And this is at a time that the venture and the organization are still relatively new and unstable. We incorporate organizational structure and process building strategies into our year-long coaching program to help entrepreneurs prepare for the coming challenges of startup. You can get to the proof of concept and seed stages. You can only do so much organizational planning before your concept is solidified. But by the time you get to the proof of concept and seed stages, you should definitely be working on organizational development to prepare for startup. At that point, you need to be ready to deliver to customers. You can outsource some of these functions, but you should plan for them, whether they're going to be in-house or external. You have to think about who you hire, what each person will do, how the accounting function will work, what kinds of business processes and rules need to be put in place, and much more. Your venture concept needs to be strong and substantive enough to give you clarity about what you need to set up to enable your organization to implement your concept. Planning for and creating a strong organization that has effective strategic and operational functions built in will also be more reassuring to potential funders and investors. We just looked at the business process side that focuses on organizational strategy and operations required to deliver the product or solution to the customer. There are also functional processes that support the business process side of the venture. Functional processes include those listed here: human capital management, information technology, financial management, asset management, enterprise risk and compliance management, external relations, business capabilities, as well as others that may apply to you. The ones in this list, however, are usually the functional processes that most startups need. And again, this is at varying degrees, right? You may need something, but it may not be the scope may not be as large as another enterprise. Again, some of these functions can be fully or partially outsourced. And as I mentioned, for business processes, you still need to include all of the required functions in your business model and venture development plan, even if you're outsourcing. Okay? So now that we've just talked a little bit about the way forward, now let's talk about how you can track your idea, at this stage, at these very early stages. This is the Idea Roadmap tool. When working on your idea in early stage development, you need a place to keep track of your progress, including what you know and don't know. In the Seed Model Canvas, you document what you believe your business model is going to be. The Idea Roadmap shown here is more like a status checklist. It can keep you on track with what you need to do in order to continue maturing your idea. It generally precedes the Seed Model Canvas, but can be used to keep a very high-level check of where you are and what you need to do. In the first row, you enter a single sentence that expresses your vision for the idea. This should remind you and your team what the solution is expected to do or accomplish. For example, our mandate is to plug people into the power to prosper. Then you just fill out the rest of the sections as best you can. Idea description, this should be brief but in greater detail than the vision and more concrete. What does it involve or affect? Examples include stakeholders, customers, and community. Sorry, who does it involve or affect? Next question is, what does it do? What are its characteristics? This question deals with functions and features. What are its benefits, impact? This involves expected benefits to your venture and impacts on stakeholders and the ecosystem. And also remember, like customer benefits. So these, the question above and this question focus on features and benefits. What do I know about it? This asks, what do I understand and operate in very well concerning the idea, problem, situation, customers, etc.? These become your strengths as you develop your idea. And you can anchor a lot of things around that strength or strength that you can build by partnering with others or finding other people with different types of talent than yourself. Okay, then what don't I know about it? For example, you may still need to learn more about items in the Seed Model Canvas that you have not yet considered, addressed, researched, or investigated. Then looking at the bottom, we see what challenges do I face? One example is that you are a startup in an industry of giants. Okay, so that's actually a barrier, might be a barrier to market, and it certainly can be a challenge. What resources do I need? Resources, again, are not just money. They include equipment, facilities, and experts. In the early stages, again, money is not easy to get. You will have more success with non-financial resources in early stage development. You need to develop a capacity within your organization to efficiently use resources and leverage them as much as possible. Resource utilization is a very important aspect of a successful company and a successful economy. And finally, what activities do I need to do? Here you list next steps, such as documenting that you completed your seed model, but now you want to find out if customers actually like the idea. Okay, so that's customer validation. The idea roadmap is a working document. It is another work management tool. You can stick it on the wall and use sticky notes in order to update it easily, or you can keep it on your computer and update it digitally on a regular basis, such as weekly. The idea roadmap is good for early stage because it forces you to be succinct at a time when things will be changing rapidly. In fact, writing long narratives about early stage factors will be time consuming and inefficient. If you are forced to be brief on the idea roadmap, it will be easier for you to see where you are and what you need to do next. In your mind and on paper, you want to have a status report that is cohesive and intelligible. You want it to be meaningful to those who read it. When there is only a problem and solution with very little description about things like customers, stakeholders, features and functions, benefits, impacts, etc., it will be difficult to get people to interact with you on the idea. You can use this tool along with the seed model canvas and other tools to help you work on your idea. So now you're actually going to do an activity to put together an idea roadmap. So since you've worked through the ideation stage in this workshop and reviewed the way forward with me, you should have a sense of where you have gaps in your own idea and where you need to start. So I'm going to have you complete the idea roadmap for your own idea. This is an individual activity. Each of you will work on your own idea roadmap. So you're going to fill in the roadmap to record your current status on your own idea. I will give you 10 minutes for this activity. After that, we will debrief. You can begin now. And so facilitator, please put me on pause. Okay, so let's debrief the activity now. And what I'm going to do is as I go around, I'm going to ask someone each section, I'm going to ask you to provide an example, your information on your idea roadmap. And I'm just going to call on one person and we'll keep going around until it's completely done, or I should say the facilitator is going to do this. So, you know, just be prepared to share, okay? So put me on pause and then we'll come back and I'll look to moving you forward into your next steps. Okay, great. I hope that was useful and you picked up some tips as you were listening to other people. And remember, I'm getting ready to close you out, but before we actually close out, the facilitator will take an opportunity to talk to you as a group and see if there are any open issues or questions that you have. But this time I'm actually getting ready to sign off. So I just wanted to tell you about some follow-up steps and then how to contact us. So just to give you a heads up on how you can continue to have us support you, first of all, use what you learned in the workshop on your own idea or venture. Continue the journey with us. We have 2 workshops that follow that could take you from idea to through proof of concept. These are not as detailed as the coaching program, but they are still very full and they give you capacity to work through the process of idea to proof of concept. So those 2 workshops are mapping, developing, and leveraging assets, strengthening your venture, conceptualizing an idea, bringing forth the code for sustainable venture, and then Creationeering is our 24-session coaching program. It can be also accessed on your own without a coach, online on demand, and also in a 1-week intensive format. Now for Creationeering, you can take that actually in depth. You can take it at any time after this workshop, but we do recommend that you take the other 2 beforehand because Creationeering is much more in depth and intense. And so if you've already worked through some of what you need to and are familiar with the process and the tools, it'll really strengthen your ability to mature your venture and idea as you're going through the coaching program. After Creationeering, we have further programs that are designed similarly that really take you through startup and then they take you through growth. But at that point, and also, I'm sorry, at that point, I also wanted to indicate that we also have other forms of support, looking at partnerships, doing your supply channel networks, access to funders, and resources as examples. So now I just want to say that I've enjoyed, even though I obviously have not had a chance to meet anyone, I've enjoyed walking you through this workshop. And if you have any questions, any issues, need any assistance, please feel free to contact us at the website or through email. This is Lori Elliott with Conceptual Lee, signing off.